And thanks for staying with us. Now, the South African Human Rights Commission will be hosting an election debate tonight. And this election debate will be aimed at highlighting the human rights aspect in each party's manifesto. And of course, we'll also try and touch on some of the developments this week, more specifically what happened yesterday in that ruling involving the EFF. But joining us right now is Buang Jones, who is the South African Human Rights Commission's Provincial Manager for the Gauteng Office. Thanks so much for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
Perhaps let's start with the EFF ruling and get that out of the way, because there was quite an outcry, at least, on social media yesterday regarding this particular ruling. But please, maybe we can start by just looking at the complaints that were brought against the EFF and what the ruling actually states.
Yeah, the South African Human Rights Commission received approximately 5 complaints against Mr. Malema and Godrich Gardee. These complaints related to the utterances that were made by both Mr. Malema and the statement posted on social media by Mr. Godrich Gardee. And the Commission, having considered the applicable law, having looked at the context within which these utterances were made a determination that the utterances attributed to Mr. Malema and the statements posted on social media by Mr. Gardee did not constitute hate speech.
So explain that, because I think this is what people were rather taken aback by. So what is the definition of hate speech?
In the South African context, we are guided by Section 16 of the Constitution. Subsection 2 of that section stipulates that no one may communicate or propagate words that are hateful, harmful, and are intended to cause imminent violence against the people to whom those comments are made. And from our assessment, the comments attributed to Mr. Malema did not meet this threshold of hate speech. We know in South Africa, with the exception of Section 11, all other rights are limited in terms of Section 36. And we know South Africans are, in terms of the Constitution, are allowed to freely express their political views, to freely express themselves. And given our history, we are not surprised that there's this uproar from other sectors of the South African population. But it is the right of every South African to express themselves freely. There will be, from time to time, objectionable utterances and disagreeable sentiments, but we should all desist, from undermining our constitutional aspirations, undermining efforts to ensure that South Africa is a socially cohesive society.
So in other words, we need to find a way of distinguishing between what is offensive and what is actually hate speech.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we don't have the right not to be offended.
Of course. And later this year, the number of cases that are before the superior courts in the country, including the Concord, we hope that there will be clarity, because in terms of the Equality Act, no one may obviously make the hateful statements and so forth. So we hope that there will finally be clarity with regards to hate speech-related matters in the country.
So just to conclude this particular matter, so you also found, however, the statements to be problematic. So explain that to us. Explain to someone who says, well, if something is found to be problematic, does that not mean that it could cause some disturbances in the public at some stage?
The statements are problematic in the sense that they militate against what we aim to achieve. A South Africa that is non-racial, non-sexist, a South Africa that is premised on human rights principles of freedom, equality, and dignity. But from a legal point of view, there is nothing wrong with the statements.
All right. So we'll leave that one there for the moment, because we want to talk about the debate that is happening tonight. The focus being on the human rights element of each political party's manifesto. So talk to us about why the Human Rights Commission would embark on a debate before elections.
We are the only Chapter 9 institution that has the broadest mandate. And we thought, as the year 2019 marks the 25th anniversary since the advent of our democracy. We want to contribute to the discourse around the entrenching democracy and solidifying all our constitutional values. And we've decided to invite 7 political parties who are currently represented in Parliament to take us through their human rights commitments and their different political manifestos. It is the first debate of its kind which will critically appraise all the election manifestos of the parties. Will be putting a human rights lens on each manifesto and will also be garnering views from the parties to assess their attitudes and commitments on key human rights issues. Now,
explain to us that. When you say you're going to be putting a human rights lens on those manifestos, what exactly will you be doing? What will you be looking at?
The Commission has a general mandate to monitor and observe to ensure the observance of human rights in South Africa, but we also have a special mandate to ensure that socio-economic rights are progressively realized. So we want to look at each manifesto, what it says pertaining to socio-economic rights in South Africa, what each manifesto says on civil and political rights in South Africa, issues of free speech, the land issue, and other freedoms that we enjoy today. There are a number of things that we'll be critically reflecting on with all these parties. But we have a panel of activist scholars who will be doing this appraisal. And the Commission, at the end of the debate, will provide its own assessment. And this will be a very colorful and lively debate. And we hope that members of the public will be glued to their screens, as SABC is a partner in this.
So in aid of what, ultimately? So you scrutinize these election manifestos of the 7 parties, and I'll ask you a bit more about the 7 parties. But once you've scrutinized them, then what? If you find something in there that is perhaps at odds with the constitutional imperatives in South Africa, what then?
Remember, the Commission is also tasked to promote human rights and to entrench a culture of human rights. And these political parties, they want to ultimately attain state power. So this critical reflection will assist the Commission. If one of the parties emerge after May 8 as the ruling party, will then be in a position to engage the ruling party or on our human rights concerns. Remember, South Africa has international obligations. We are a signatory to a number of international conventions, and the South African Human Rights Commission also produces reports on the state of human rights in South Africa. We submit our shadow reports to the UN Human Rights Committee, and South Africa is obligated as well or every 3 years to submit such reports. And the aim is to entrench our democracy. The aim is to embed a culture of human rights and to contribute to the discourse around the elections, as this is the 6th election in the country, which solidifies or entrenches our constitutional democracy.
Well, we're out of time, but I just wanted to ask you about the 7 parties. How did you select those parties, and who are they?
Well, we look at the results of 2014 elections, and that's the basis or the criteria that we used. We've invited the ACDP, IFP, UDM, the EFF, DA, ANC, and the FF+.
And of course, for those watching, you invited the public to come along. Is there still space, and how do they attend? Where?
There's no space. People have RSVP'd. But the debate will be carried by the SABC from 6 to 8 p.m. today.
So do stay tuned to SABC and News Channel 404 tonight for that particular debate. But thanks to Buang Jones, South African Human Rights Commission Provincial Manager from the Gauteng Office. And the South African Human Rights Commission will be hosting its election debate, and that is tonight at Constitution Hill at the Women's Jail and Conference Venue 2. But as you heard, it's full, so the only way you can catch it is by staying right here on SABC.